In this video, we're going to be learning about functions, variables, and user input, and we're going to be learning these concepts by creating a calculator in Python. So to start off, what exactly is a function? A function is a block of code which performs a specific task. So if you think about our calculator, what functions do you think it needs to have? Well, our calculator needs to be able to add numbers together, subtract numbers, multiply numbers, and also divide numbers. So let's have a go at creating our first function in Python. So every single function in Python starts in the same way, which is with the def keyword. And we're going to create a function for adding two numbers together. So let's include the name of our function. So let's just call it add. And we also need to think about what we need to give the function for it to work. So for our add function, we need to give it two numbers for it to add together. So I'll call this num1 and num2. And we'll also enter a colon. And inside this, we can start writing the code for our function. So for adding two numbers together, we're simply going to add these two numbers using the plus operator. And currently we haven't stored the result anywhere. So to store data in Python, we use something called variables. So variables are ways of storing data, and an example would be results. So here I've just created a variable called result, and inside result I've stored the addition of num1 and num2, so both of the numbers added together. So you can think about variables like a box. So imagine if I open up the box result, then inside I would find the addition of these two numbers. And lastly, to complete our function, we're just going to return the result. And there we go. So we've just created a function. So it's really important that we test our code and double check that it does what we expect. So let's add two numbers together. It could be any two numbers. Let's try 7 and 10. And we're also just going to print our result so we can see it. And as you can see, we get 17, which is what we expect. And now we're going to have a go at creating our subtract function. So for subtract, we're just going to change the name of the function. We're still going to be passing it two numbers. But the only difference would be for this function, we're going to be subtracting. So we'll still store our result inside this variable called result. And instead of adding, we'll just subtract. And we'll return the result. And let's just see if this works. So we're going to call subtract. And I'll leave the numbers the same. So 7 subtract 10 minus 3. So that's right. Okay, so a short exercise for you to solve. So have a go at completing the functions for multiply and divide. And if you're not sure about which operators you should use for multiplying and dividing, here is a table. So you can use asterisk for multiplication. And for division, you can use a slash. Okay, now we're going to have a go at writing the functions for multiplying and dividing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reuse the code for adding. And I'm just going to change the name of the function to multiply. And we're going to change the addition to an asterisk. So this will just multiply the numbers. And we're also going to do a similar thing for division. And we're going to use a slash. Okay, and that's it. So those are our four functions for this simple calculator program. Let's double check that our multiply and divide functions work, because we need to test them. We should get 70 for this, and yep, we do. And let's have a go at dividing 35 by 7. We should get 5. Oh, okay, so I just forgot to change the name of the function. So here I was calling the multiply function, so it was going to this function, and it was doing 35 times 7, which is 245. But what I meant to do is divide, so division. And we should get 5. Yep, there we go. So that's our simple calculator program. Just to recap what functions are. So a function is essentially a block of code which performs a specific task. So our add function performs performs a calculation for adding these two numbers together. And we use variables, a variable called result, to store the calculation's result, and then we returned it using the return keyword. Now we're going to learn about how we can get user input. So user input just means that we're going to allow the user to type something with their keyboard and interact with our program. So to get user input, we use the input function, and what we do is we ask the user a question. So let's say we want to create a program which asks a user for their name. So maybe we'll say, please enter your name, and then whoops, and please enter your age, and it could ask a bunch of other things, but we'll keep it simple. So we're going to ask the user to please enter your name, and now that we've got the user's name, we might want to use this later on in the program, so it will be a good idea to store this inside a variable. So let's create a variable called name, and we will assign it so that it stores whatever the user has inputted. So let's ask the user for the age as well. So please enter your age. And I'm also going to just add a space at the end here. So the reason is because when we get the user's input, we don't want the question to be right next to the user's answer. And it will just look nice if we just include a space in between. Okay, and now we've got the user's name and age stored inside these variables, we can actually use the variable names to print what the user has typed. So we could say your name is, and we could include their name. And as you can see here, I'm just using these plus operators just to join the string with the variables. And I've printed their name, so now I'm going to print their age. Your age is age. So as you can see here, I'm just using the variable names that we have created earlier. Okay, now let's run the program. Okay, so it says, please enter your name. So I'll just enter, let's do Barry Allen. And age, I'll say 25. Okay, so your name is Barry Allen and your age is 25. So that's how we get user input in Python. Now you're going to write a fun program to help you to test your skills in using variables and concatenating strings. So what I've designed is a small exercise. So how this works is you're going to create a small story. It doesn't have to be real or anything. So I've just created a story here. So I wrote, it is December and the day is day. And anywhere where I have included a variable name is where the user can input something. So the user could say Saturday, for example, and the weather is weather. I am really emotion because I event on the way to school, and so on. So let's run it and I'll show you how it works. Okay, so first it asks the user what day it is. So I'm just going to put a Saturday. What is the weather like? It is freezing cold. Enter a random emotion. Angry. Enter a random event. I'll just put falling off my bike. Enter a random emoji. Okay. Two of my favorite hobbies: running and eating ice cream. My favorite animal: cats. Okay, so let's see what the story says. So it is December and the day is Saturday. The weather is freezing cold. I'm really angry because I'm falling off my bike on the way to school. Tomorrow I am excited to running and eating ice cream with my pet cats. Okay, so that's my story. So now you can make your own story, and once you've made it, make sure to leave it down in the comments so other people can try it out. And yeah, so this will really improve your skills in using variables and also how concatenating strings. The last exercise that you should complete is going back to our calculator that we made at the beginning, and what we're going to do is we're going to try and make it so that the user actually inputs the numbers themselves. So this is what the program should look like once it's completely complete. So it should ask, please enter your first number, and then you would enter 54 and another number 32. And as you can see, it just adds the number, but it asks the user to enter the numbers themselves. So have a go at coding this and pause the video at this point. And once you've completed your program, make sure to come back and check out the solution. Okay, so here's the solution. So all we do is we use the input method to ask the user to enter some numbers, and we store these inside variables. And we also have a result variable which returns the sum, which contains the sum of the two numbers. And what I've done is I've casted these both to floats. So a float is basically a number which contains decimals. So you could do int as well if you want it to be an integer, but if you do that, then you won't be able to add decimal numbers. And the reason we have to do this is because when we create this variable here, we ask the user to enter some values using their keyboard, and that means that that is actually a string. So num1 is actually storing a string, even though we know that num1 should actually be an integer because we're going to add it later on. So what we need to do is later on we need to change this to either a float or an integer, and after that everything else is the same. We just return the result, and yeah, so that's it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.